Here's an episode of How to Analyse Poetry from the Learning Cauldron. Today we'll be looking at Edwin Morgan's poem Trio. Analysing poetry involves identifying and dissecting the literary techniques that the poet uses effectively to explore the theme or themes of a poem. In his poem Trio, Edwin Morgan explores the themes of religion, the power of human connection, and hope. The title of the poem is Trio, and that arouses the reader's curiosity as to who the trio may be. And 3, as is ever the case in literature, is an important number throughout the poem. The poem is written in the present tense, which adds an air of immediacy to it. The setting is established quickly in the first line by the reference to Buchanan Street, which is in Glasgow. And there's a reference also, the word choice of sharp tells us what the weather is like. It's a winter's evening and it's cold. The poet is walking down the street and he notices 3 people. Now, you or I might have walked past them, but he is very, very good at observing detail. And he notices not only that there are this young man and 2 girls, but also exactly what they are carrying, down to the most intricate details, as we'll find out later. So the man is carrying a guitar, the first girl is carrying a very young baby, and the other girl is carrying a chihuahua, a little dog. And if we were thinking of the fact that it's Christmas time, because the Christmas lights are referenced, there is the sort of feeling that these 3 are like the wise men following the Christmas light, the star from the Bible story. The reference to the 3 is mentioned again. It goes back to the title Trio. There's a wonderful image to describe them. They're happy together. They have the camaraderie that comes from friendship, and this metaphor, their breath rises in a cloud of happiness, is wonderful. You almost get the idea that they're protected by this bubble of joy that surrounds them. They're enveloped in it. And just so that we don't forget that we're in Glasgow, there's the use of the word but at the end of "wait till he sees this but," which is typical of Glasgow dialect, and that reinforces the setting. We then get the intimate details of each of the 3 objects that are being carried by this group of 3 friends. There's a lovely imagery here, the tiny Royal Stuart tartan coat like a teapot holder. And if you think of the shape of a teapot holder with the spout and the lid coming out of it and the handle, the little dog's limbs and head are peeking out of the tartan coat that it's in. The tiny tartan and teapot, that alliteration of T's, adds the feeling of detail and precision, which is so characteristic of Morgan's poetry. The symbolism here, the baby is wrapped in a white shawl, white symbolising innocence, and of course a baby symbolises innocence. And then this lovely image, a mouth like favours in a fresh sweet cake, so almost like the decorations that are on a cake. It makes the baby sound very attractive. The guitar packaging is also described in intricate detail. We're told that it's tied at the neck, the packaging is tied at the neck with silver tinsel tape and a brisk sprig of mistletoe. We've got a combination here of sound techniques. We've got the sibilance of the S running throughout, we've got the short staccato T, tinsel tape, and we've also got the short I sounds. So it makes the detail seem very, very intense. And this is very characteristic of Morgan's poetry, where he does observe detail greatly. Moving from sound techniques to structural techniques, the next line is interesting. We've got 3 short exclamations, and we've got the use of the caesura there to emphasize the 3, harking back to the idea of trio in the title. Orphean sprig. Sprig is a little piece of wood, and Orpheus was famous in Greek mythology for being able to charm things with his music. So therefore the guitar is being referred to as an Orphean sprig, a piece of wood that can charm with music. Melting baby, the baby's in a shawl, so it's warm, and the warm chihuahua, we know that the chihuahua has its little jacket on as well. And the reference to warmth here is in stark contrast to the sharp coldness of the air. Then we have a biblical reference, the Vale of Tears, which are the woes that everyone leaves behind when they shuffle off their mortal coil and die. But what he says here is that this is powerless when confronted with the friendship and the warmth of these 3 people together. And he shows that this poem is secular. He's an atheist himself, Morgan. Whether Christ is born or is not born, what's important here, he's saying, is nothing to do with necessarily religion. It's people and the bond, the human connections that they form, and how that creates a warmth that is almost invincible. Another reference is made to the darker side of life, the dark events of the year, monsters. They are actually, an image is used to describe these events as monsters. But what he says is that with these 3 people, the march of 3, these monsters are dispersed. They're sent away, and this shows that human spirit can triumph. That's the end of the first stanza. Moving on now to the second stanza, there's a reference once again to the 3, the trio from the title, and he says they may have gone, and it jumps here from the present tense, the whole of the first stanza is written in the present tense, it jumps to the past tense because the moment has passed. It's just a moment that he's encapsulated with the poem. And then he adds a little addendum here in parenthesis, yet not vanished. They haven't actually gone because they leave the legacy behind them of the connection between humans and the fact that they are protected. And this wonderful image that he uses here, laughter ringing them round like a guard. The simile shows that they are protected by their friendship and the warmth that that generates and their laughter, and it almost acts like soldiers or some sort of security guard protecting them from the evils of the world. And that leaves us with a very hopeful and positive feeling at the end of this poem, at the end of this winter's day. And the winter just reminds us of the cold, but we've already found out that the warmth vanquishes this cold. I hope that's been helpful. See you next time.